The glass walls of Blake Tech Industries reflected the morning sun as Jonathan Blake stood in his corner office, staring at the city sprawled beneath him. At 38, he had everything the world considered success: a tech empire valued at $15 billion, properties across 3 continents, and a name that commanded respect in boardrooms worldwide. Yet the reflection staring back at him showed a man whose eyes held no warmth, only the calculated coldness of someone who had learned to survive without feeling. His assistant knocked softly before entering. The appointment reminder made him grimace. Another hospital visit. Another round of tests because his body was finally rebelling against years of 8 workdays and stress that seemed permanently etched into his shoulders. St. Margaret's Hospital welcomed him with the familiar smell of antiseptic and the hushed efficiency of expensive private healthcare. Jonathan went through the motions mechanically, answering questions about his sleep patterns, his diet, his stress levels, all while his mind wandered to places he had spent 2 years trying to avoid. Emma Rodriguez had entered his life 3 years ago at a charity gala. While everyone else had approached him with business proposals or thinly veiled networking attempts, she had been standing alone near a Renaissance painting, completely absorbed in studying the brushwork. Something about her genuine fascination with the art, rather than the wealthy donors, had drawn him across the room. She worked as a curator at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, passionate about preserving history and making art accessible to everyone. Her apartment was tiny, filled with books and postcards from museums around the world. She wore dresses from thrift stores with more pride than the socialites who spent thousands on designer gowns. When she smiled, it reached her eyes, crinkling the corners in a way that made Jonathan realize how rare, genuine happiness was in his world. Their relationship had been his secret rebellion against the life Catherine Blake had orchestrated for him. His mother, a formidable businesswoman who had helped build Blake Tech alongside his late father, had very specific plans for Jonathan's future. Those plans included Vanessa Thornton, daughter of their biggest investment partner, a woman groomed from birth to be the perfect corporate wife. Jonathan had hidden Emma from that world for nearly a year. Quiet dinners in small restaurants across town, weekends at a cabin upstate where no one knew his name, stolen moments in her apartment where they could just be 2 people in love. Rather than a billionaire and a museum curator from completely different worlds, he had planned to tell Catherine about Emma, to finally stand up for what he wanted. The week before he intended to make the announcement, everything had fallen apart. Emma had left a note, brief and devastating, saying their worlds were too different and she needed to move on. When he tried to call, her number was disconnected. Her apartment was empty. Her colleagues at the museum said she had resigned suddenly for personal reasons. Every private investigator he hired hit dead ends. Then Catherine had shown him the evidence. Bank statements showing large deposits into Emma's account. A recording that sounded like Emma laughing about how easy it had been to make the lonely billionaire fall for her. Emails discussing how much money she could extract before leaving. Jonathan had wanted to deny it all, but the evidence seemed irrefutable. The woman he loved had been using him, and he had been too blind to see it. The betrayal had frozen something inside him, turning him into the ruthless businessman Catherine had always wanted him to be. 6 months after Emma disappeared, Jonathan had agreed to date Vanessa. It meant nothing to him, but it satisfied Catherine and the board of directors, who saw the union as a strategic alliance. Vanessa was beautiful in a carefully maintained way, accomplished on paper and utterly boring to Jonathan. But he no longer cared about passion or connection. Those things were for fools who believed in love. The marriage proposal had happened 3 months ago at another charity gala, orchestrated by Catherine, with photographers ready to capture the moment. Vanessa's delighted yes had been met with applause from the assembled elite. Jonathan had felt nothing but a distant sense of inevitability, like watching his own life happen to someone else now. Sitting in the hospital waiting room after his examination, Jonathan felt the familiar emptiness that no amount of success could fill. The doctor had prescribed medication for his stress and insomnia, suggested meditation and exercise. The usual remedies for a life lived at breaking speed with no real purpose. Beyond accumulating more wealth and power, he was walking through the hospital corridor toward the exit when he took a wrong turn. Distracted by an email on his phone, the antiseptic smell grew stronger, mixed with something sweeter, almost like baby powder. He looked up and realized he had wandered into the pediatric wing. Children's artwork covered the walls. Bright and cheerful attempts to make the clinical space less frightening. Jonathan turned to retrace his steps when he heard a voice that made his heart stop. It was softer than he remembered. It's tired in a way it had never been before, but unmistakably hers. Emma was sitting in a chair near the window, holding a baby against her shoulder, gently patting the small back while humming a lullaby. Time seemed to fracture. Jonathan stood frozen, unable to process what he was seeing. Emma looked different. Her hair was shorter, pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore jeans and a simple sweater rather than the flowing dresses she used to love. There were shadows under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and worry that had carved faint lines at the corners of her mouth. But it was the baby that held Jonathan's attention. Even from across the room, he could see the thick dark hair, the shape of the small nose. Features that triggered something primal in his recognition. Emma looked up, perhaps sensing someone watching. Their eyes met across the pediatric waiting room, and Jonathan watched the color drain from her face. Emma's arms tightened protectively around the baby as Jonathan walked toward her. Each step felt surreal, like moving through water. 2 years of anger, hurt, and unanswered questions propelled him forward, even as a voice in his head screamed that this couldn't be real. Jonathan. His name came out as barely a whisper from her lips. He stopped a few feet away, his eyes moving from her face to the child in her arms. The baby couldn't have been more than 18 months old, with chubby cheeks and tiny fingers that gripped Emma's sweater. When the child turned to look at the stranger, Jonathan felt the ground shift beneath him. The eyes staring back at him were his own. The same unusual shade of gray-green that ran in the Blake family, that stared back at him from every family portrait in Catherine's mansion. The same shaped face, the same slight cleft in the chin that Jonathan saw in his mirror every morning. How old? The question came out rough, his throat tight, Emma's eyes filled with tears. 18 months? His name is Lucas. The math was brutal and immediate. She had been pregnant when she left, carrying his child while she disappeared without a trace, while he believed she had betrayed him for money. We need to talk now. Jonathan's voice carried the authority he used in boardrooms, but there was something raw underneath it. A nurse approached, smiling at Emma. Mrs. Rodriguez. The doctor can see Lucas now for his checkup. Can you give me 5 minutes? Emma's voice trembled. Please, it's important. The nurse looked between them, sensing the tension, and nodded. Room 3 will be ready when you are. Jonathan gestured to an empty consultation room nearby. Emma stood slowly, adjusting Lucas on her hip. The baby watched Jonathan with curious eyes, reaching out one hand toward him. The innocent gesture felt like a knife to Jonathan's chest. Inside the room, Emma sat down, keeping Lucas close. Jonathan closed the door and leaned against it, afraid that if he didn't, he might do something crazy like fall apart completely. Talk, he said. Tell me everything. Emma took a shaky breath. I found out I was pregnant 3 days before I left. I was terrified, but happy. I bought a little pair of baby shoes to surprise you with. I had this whole plan to tell you over dinner. Why didn't you? The anger in his voice made Lucas whimper. Emma soothed the baby automatically, her hand rubbing gentle circles on his back. 'Cause your mother showed up at my apartment that morning. Emma's voice hardened. With Vanessa Thornton. They knew about the pregnancy somehow. I hadn't told anyone, but they knew. Jonathan felt ice forming in his stomach. Catherine said I was ruining your life. That I was a nobody trying to trap you with a baby. Vanessa was crueler. She said I was pathetic if I thought you actually loved me, that you were just amusing yourself while waiting for someone appropriate. Emma wiped her eyes with her free hand. I told them I didn't want anything from you except honesty about our relationship. I said we loved each other. What did they do? Jonathan's hands clenched into fists. Vanessa laughed. She showed me photographs of you and her at business dinners, events I didn't know about. She said you had been seeing her the whole time we were together, that I was the side distraction. Emma's voice broke. Catherine offered me $500,000 to disappear. When I refused, she said she would destroy me. She had connections at the museum, could make sure I never worked in my field again. She said she would prove I was an unfit mother and take the baby once it was born. Jonathan's vision blurred with rage. You should have called me? I tried. Emma pulled out her phone with trembling hands, showing him the call log. Dozens of calls to his number from 2 years ago, all lasting only seconds. Every time I called, Vanessa answered. She said you gave her your phone because you didn't want to deal with my harassment. She said if I kept trying to contact you, they would get a restraining order. It's not possible. I never gave her my phone. I know that now. They must have cloned it somehow or forwarded the calls. Emma set her phone down. The final straw was when I found an eviction notice on my door. My landlord said I had violated my lease. It was a lie, but he had been paid to say it. I had 1 week to leave. So you ran. I protected my son. The fierce protectiveness in her voice reminded Jonathan of why he had fallen in love with her. I had some savings. I moved to a small town 3 hours away, found work at a local library and waitressed at night. I had Lucas in a county hospital with no insurance, because I was afraid if I used my real information, Catherine would find us. Jonathan looked at Lucas, really looked at him. The baby was healthy, alert, wearing clothes that were clean but obviously secondhand. Emma looked exhausted, worn thin by 2 years of struggling alone. The evidence, Jonathan said quietly. The bank deposits, the recordings, the emails. Catherine showed me proof that you had used me. Emma's eyes widened. What evidence? I never took any money except my museum salary. There were bank statements showing large deposits into your account. That's impossible. Show me. Jonathan pulled out his phone and found the file his mother had sent him 2 years ago. Emma studied the bank statement, then shook her head. This isn't my account. Look at the account number. My account number ends in 7,743. This ends in 7,734. They created a fake account in my name. Jonathan felt sick. The account numbers were so similar he had never thought to verify them. And the recordings? Emma asked. He played the audio file. A woman's voice, somewhat like Emma's, laughing about manipulating a rich boyfriend. Emma listened and shook her head. That's not me. My voice is higher. This is an impersonator, or they edited different audio clips together. Every piece of evidence that had convinced Jonathan of her betrayal was crumbling. He had been so hurt, so ready to believe the worst, that he hadn't questioned anything carefully enough. I should have known, he whispered. I knew you. I should have known you would never do that. They were convincing. They had resources I couldn't fight. Emma adjusted Lucas, who was getting fussy. I didn't leave to hurt you, Jonathan. I left because I was terrified. Catherine made it clear she would take my baby. I couldn't risk it. You've been raising him alone this whole time. It hasn't been easy. But he's healthy and happy. That's what matters. She kissed Lucas's forehead. I only came back to the city because he needed a specialist. He has a minor heart murmur. The local doctors said it would probably resolve on its own. But I wanted the best care for him. Jonathan moved closer, kneeling in front of them, so he was at eye level with Lucas. The baby studied him with serious eyes, then smiled, showing tiny teeth. Can I hold him? Jonathan's voice cracked. Emma hesitated for only a moment before carefully transferring Lucas to Jonathan's arms. The weight was slight but substantial, the warmth and solidity of his son in his arms for the first time overwhelming every other sensation. Hi, Lucas, Jonathan whispered. I'm your father. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. Lucas grabbed Jonathan's tie, tugging on it with determination. A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep in Jonathan's chest, surprising him. When had he last laughed genuinely? He likes you, Emma said softly, tears streaming down her face. I've missed 18 months of his life because of lies. Jonathan looked at Emma over their son's head. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix everything. Jonathan, I don't want your money. I just want Lucas to be healthy. This isn't about money. This is about the fact that Catherine and Vanessa destroyed our lives, kept me from my son, and almost succeeded in their sick plan. His voice was steel now. They're going to pay for what they did. And then, if you'll let me, I want to be part of his life. Part of both your lives. Emma searched his face. What about Vanessa? I saw the engagement announcement online. There is no engagement. Not anymore. There never really was. Jonathan stood, still holding Lucas. I was going through the motions of a life I didn't want because I thought the woman I loved had betrayed me. But she didn't. She was protecting our son. It's been 2 years, Jonathan. You can't just walk back into our lives and expect everything to be perfect. I don't expect perfect. I expect to fight for my family. He met her eyes. If you'll let me. Before Emma could answer, Lucas reached for her, making his preference clear. Jonathan handed him back, feeling the loss immediately. Let me take care of Lucas's medical bills. Let me make sure he has the best care. That's not about us. That's about him. Jonathan pulled out a business card and wrote on the back. This is my personal number. The real one. Call me after his appointment, please. Emma took the card, her fingers brushing his. The brief contact sent electricity through both of them, a reminder that whatever they had once had wasn't completely dead. Okay, she whispered. I'll call. Jonathan left the room feeling like he was walking into battle. Catherine and Vanessa had 2 years to enjoy their victory. That was about to end. Jonathan Blake walked out of St. Margaret's Hospital, a different man than the one who had entered that morning. The cold emptiness that had defined him for 2 years was burning away, replaced by a fury so intense it felt like fire in his veins. Catherine and Vanessa had stolen his son's first steps, first words, first smile. They had left Emma struggling alone while they orchestrated a life built on lies. His first call was to Richard Morrison, the attorney who handled Blake Tech's most sensitive legal matters. Richard, I need you to investigate 2 people. I want bank records, phone records, everything for the past 3 years. Catherine Blake and Vanessa Thornton, your mother and your fiancé. Richard's surprise was evident. Former fiancé, as of right now, and I need this done quietly and quickly. They committed fraud, identity theft, possibly blackmail, and harassment. I want evidence that will hold up in court. Jonathan, are you sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I also need you to look into a hospital in Millbrook County. There should be birth records for a Lucas Rodriguez, born approximately 18 months ago. I want a paternity test arranged immediately, though I already know what it will say. Jonathan's voice softened. He's my son, Richard. And I didn't know he existed because of what they did. There was a long pause. I'll have preliminary findings by tomorrow morning. The second call was harder. Jonathan dialed Vanessa's number, his jaw tight. Darling, how was your hospital visit? Her voice was sweet, practiced. I was thinking we should finalize the wedding venue this week. Mother is insisting on the plaza, but I thought something more intimate might be nice. The wedding is off. Then, carefully controlled? What are you talking about? Is this about work stress? The doctor said you needed rest. I saw Emma today. With my son, you heard her sharp intake of breath. I don't know what that woman told you, but you can't believe her. She's clearly trying to trap you again with some child that probably isn't even yours. His name is Lucas, and he has my eyes. He has the Blake family cleft chin. He even has the same birthmark on his left shoulder that I have. Jonathan's voice was deadly calm. And I know everything, Vanessa. The fake bank account, the forged recordings, the eviction notice, all of it. Jonathan, you're being irrational. Your mother and I only wanted to protect you from a gold digger. You wanted to control me. There's a difference. He looked out at the city skyline. I'm giving you one chance to come clean. Tell me everything you and Catherine did, and maybe I won't press criminal charges. You wouldn't dare. My father's firm is your biggest investor. Your father's firm needs Blake Tech more than I need them. I've already spoken to the other board members. They're willing to buy out Thornton Industries' share if necessary. It was a bluff, but his voice didn't waver. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. Confess everything or face prosecution. He hung up before she could respond. The confrontation with Catherine happened that evening at the Blake family mansion. Jonathan didn't call ahead. He simply walked in using his key, finding his mother in her study, reviewing quarterly reports. Jonathan, what a pleasant surprise. I wasn't expecting you tonight. Catherine looked up with the controlled smile she had perfected over decades of business negotiations. I met my son today. Her pen stopped moving across the page. For just a moment, genuine emotion flickered across her face before the mask returned. I see Emma has crawled out of whatever hole she's been hiding in. You mean the hole you forced her into when you threatened to take her baby and destroy her life? Jonathan closed the study door. I know everything, Mother. The fake evidence, the harassment, the lies. I did what was necessary to protect you from making the biggest mistake of your life. Catherine stood, drawing herself to full height. That woman was completely wrong for you. She had no breeding, no connections, nothing to offer the Blake legacy.
She offered me love. Real love, not whatever calculated arrangement you had planned with the Thorntons. Jonathan's hands shook with suppressed rage. And she gave me a son. Your grandson, who you've never met because you were too busy playing puppet master with my life. Don't be dramatic. You have responsibilities. The company, the family name, these things matter more than some infatuation with a museum worker. You're right about one thing. I do have responsibilities. To Lucas and to Emma. Everything else comes second. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. These are the results of the investigation I commissioned. Bank fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, witness tampering with Emma's landlord. There's enough here to put you in prison. Catherine's face paled. You're bluffing. Try me. Jonathan set the envelope on her desk. You have two choices. You resign from the Blake Tech Board immediately, issue a public apology to Emma, and set up a trust fund for Lucas. Or I go to the authorities with everything and let the courts decide your fate. I'm your mother. A mother protects her child's happiness. You destroyed mine. Jonathan walked to the door. You have until tomorrow morning. Choose wisely. He left her standing in the study, the envelope unopened on her desk. 3 days later, the dominoes began to fall. Catherine resigned from Blake Tech, citing health reasons. Vanessa's father quietly ended their investment partnership after learning what his daughter had done. Vanessa herself accepted a position at a Thornton Industries office in Singapore, as far from the scandal as possible. But Jonathan wasn't focused on their downfall. His attention was entirely on the small apartment across town where Emma and Lucas were staying during the medical appointments. He visited every evening after work, at first awkwardly sitting on the worn couch while Lucas played with blocks on the floor. Emma watched him carefully, still guarded, still protecting herself and their son from potential hurt. You don't have to keep coming, she said one evening. I know you're busy. There's nothing more important than this. Jonathan sat on the floor, handing Lucas a blue block. The toddler grabbed it with a delighted squeal and immediately tried to eat it. I missed his birth. His first Christmas. The first time he smiled. I'm not missing anything else. He started walking at 11 months, Emma said softly. Early, the doctor said. He's very determined. Like his mother. Jonathan looked up at her. Emma, I need you to know something. I don't expect you to forgive me immediately. I should have fought harder to find you. I should have questioned the evidence. I should have trusted what I knew about you instead of believing lies. They were convincing lies. And you were hurt. Emma joined them on the floor, watching Lucas stack blocks with intense concentration. I was angry at first. Angry that you didn't look harder, didn't believe in us more. But then I realized they had years to plan their manipulation. We never stood a chance against that level of deception. We have a chance now. Jonathan caught her hand. I'm not asking you to jump back into a relationship. I'm asking for the opportunity to prove that I'm someone worth trusting again. For Lucas's sake and for ours. Emma studied their joined hands. I've been alone for 2 years. I learned to be independent, to handle everything myself. It's hard to let someone back in. I know. I'll wait as long as it takes. The paternity test results came back, officially confirming what they both already knew. Jonathan was Lucas's father. With that legal documentation, Jonathan set up accounts for Lucas's education and future, paid off all of Emma's debts from the past 2 years, and arranged for the best pediatric cardiologist in the country to monitor Lucas's heart murmur. Emma initially resisted his help. I don't want your money, Jonathan. I never did. This isn't about money. It's about making sure our son has every advantage and that you don't have to work 3 jobs to survive. He held her gaze. Let me help. Please. Slowly, carefully, they built a new relationship. Jonathan learned Lucas's routines, his favorite foods, the exact way he liked to be held before nap time. He read bedtime stories with funny voices that made the toddler giggle. He changed diapers, warmed bottles, and walked the floor at 2 in the morning when Lucas was teething. Emma watched him transform from the cold businessman back into the man she had fallen in love with. He laughed more. The hard lines around his mouth softened. When Lucas said "Dada" for the first time, pointing at Jonathan, both parents cried. For months after their reunion, Jonathan invited Emma to dinner. Not at a fancy restaurant but at the cabin upstate where they used to escape together. "I haven't been back here since you left," he admitted as they arrived. Lucas was with a trusted babysitter, giving them their first evening alone in over 2 years. "I couldn't bear it." The cabin looked exactly the same. Emma walked through the rooms, memories flooding back. "We were happy here. I want us to be happy again. Here and everywhere else." Jonathan took both her hands. "I love you, Emma. I never stopped, even when I thought I hated you. These past months, watching you with Lucas, remembering who we used to be and discovering who we are now, I've fallen in love with you all over again." "Jonathan." Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm not asking for an answer tonight. I just needed you to know." He kissed her forehead gently. "You and Lucas are my family. Everything else in my life is just details." Emma pulled him down into a real kiss, one that held 2 years of longing and pain and hope. When they broke apart, both were breathless. "I love you too," she whispered. "I tried not to. I tried to convince myself we were over. But my heart never listened." They spent the evening talking, really talking, about everything they had been through. The pain, the loneliness, the moment Emma had held their newborn son and wished desperately that Jonathan could be there. The nights Jonathan had dreamed of her and woken up feeling empty. "We can't get that time back," Emma said, curled against him on the couch. "But we can move forward. Together? Together." 6 months later, they were married in a small ceremony at the cabin. Lucas, now 2 years old and full of energy, served as ring bearer with Jonathan's best friend helping guide him down the aisle. Emma wore a simple white dress that made her look radiant. Jonathan couldn't stop smiling. There were only 20 guests. Emma's friends from the museum who had never stopped believing in her. Jonathan's colleagues who genuinely cared about him rather than his money. And surprisingly, Catherine Blake, who stood in the back and watched her son marry the woman she had tried to destroy. After the ceremony, Catherine approached Emma hesitantly. "May I speak with you?" Emma tensed, but Jonathan squeezed her hand. "I'll be right here." Catherine faced Emma, and for the first time, her composure cracked. "I was wrong. About everything. I thought I was protecting Jonathan, but I was really trying to control him because I was afraid of losing him like I lost his father. I destroyed something beautiful because I couldn't see past my own fear and prejudice." Tears ran down her face. "I'm sorry. I know that's inadequate, but I am truly, deeply sorry." Emma looked at the woman who had caused her so much pain. She could have held on to anger, could have refused forgiveness. Instead, she thought of Lucas, who deserved to know his grandmother if she was truly willing to change. "Lucas is going to need all the family he can get," Emma said quietly. "If you're willing to be a real grandmother to him, not someone trying to control his future, then we can try to move forward." Catherine nodded, unable to speak through her tears. Later, as they danced together for the first time as husband and wife, Jonathan held Emma close. "Thank you for giving my mother another chance. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption. You gave me one when you could have stayed angry about me leaving. She gets the same opportunity." Emma rested her head on his shoulder. "Besides, I want Lucas to grow up surrounded by love, even complicated love. Have I mentioned how incredible you are?" Jonathan kissed her temple. "Once or twice today." She smiled up at him. "But I never get tired of hearing it." Lucas ran between their legs, giggling as Jonathan's friend chased him in a game of tag. The cabin was full of laughter and music, warmth and hope. 1 year after the wedding, Emma stood in the nursery of their new home, a beautiful house that balanced Jonathan's resources with her need for it to feel like a real home rather than a showpiece. She rocked gently in the chair, holding their 3-month-old daughter, Sophia, while watching Jonathan play with Lucas in the yard through the window. Lucas was building an elaborate castle with blocks while explaining the entire construction process to his father with 3-year-old logic. Jonathan listened intently, asking questions and offering blocks, completely absorbed in his son's world. "Your brother has your father wrapped around his little finger," Emma whispered to Sophia. "And you will too, I suspect." The doorbell rang, and moments later, Catherine appeared in the nursery doorway, holding shopping bags. "I hope I'm not intruding. I brought a few things for Sophia." "You're not intruding. Come meet your granddaughter properly." Emma stood, letting Catherine take the baby. Catherine held Sophia with surprising tenderness, her eyes soft. "She has your nose. And Jonathan's stubborn chin already, I think." "She's perfect," Emma agreed. "They both are. All of you are." Catherine looked up. "Thank you for letting me be part of their lives. I know I don't deserve it. You're working to deserve it now. That's what matters." Emma watched her mother-in-law coo at the baby. "Lucas asks about Grandma Catherine all the time. You've become important to him. He's taught me more about what really matters than all my years building businesses." Catherine handed Sophia back carefully. "Love isn't about control or fear. It's about letting go and trusting that the people you love will choose to stay because they want to, not because you've manipulated them into it." Through the window, they watched Jonathan scoop Lucas up and spin him around, both of them laughing. The little boy's squeals of delight drifted through the open window. "I almost lost all of this because of my own arrogance," Catherine said quietly. "But you didn't. You're here now, and that's what counts." Emma touched her arm gently. "We all made mistakes. What defines us is how we move forward from them." That evening, after Lucas was asleep and Sophia was fed and drowsing in her bassinet, Jonathan found Emma on the back porch, looking at the stars. "Penny for your thoughts?" He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Just thinking about how different life is from 3 years ago." She leaned back against him. "I was alone, scared, convinced I'd lost you forever. Now I have everything I ever wanted." "We have everything," Jonathan corrected. "A family. A home. A future." He turned her to face him. "You gave me that, Emma. You and Lucas and now Sophia. You gave me a reason to be more than just a businessman. You made me a father, a husband, a real person instead of just a name and a bank account. You did that yourself. I just loved you." "Just loved me," he repeated with a soft laugh. "That's everything." They stood together under the stars, the house behind them glowing with warm light. Inside, their children slept safely. Around them, the life they had built together thrived, rooted in truth and genuine love rather than manipulation and lies. The journey had been painful, marked by deception and loss. But standing there together, Jonathan and Emma both knew that every struggle had been worth it to arrive at this moment. They had their family, their love, and a future filled with endless possibilities. And this time, no one would tear them apart. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like, share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories.